So what is coaching all about? What's the objective of coaching? Why do we need coaching? Let me establish a perspective. Coaching is about building awareness and actions. So let's start off with a little bit of humor. Let's say you're an employee and you go into your boss's office and you say, "Boss, I'm stagnant. I don't have a clue in the world what I need to improve, but I need to get out of my comfort zone. I need some uncomfortable change." Now, I bet you're at least smiling or giggling a little bit, but think about it. How often does that happen? How often do employees do that? We as manager coaches have to build awareness of these opportunities where they can improve. I also think coaching is about building emotional intelligence. It's the awareness factor. And here's a rough, very simple definition, and there's certainly many out in the marketplace, but emotional intelligence is the ability, the capacity, skills, and self-perceived ability to assess and manage one's emotions and those of others in the group. Think about it. Let's go back to a little bit of humor. We call in an employee. Let's call him Charlie. We say, "Charlie, you've got a negative attitude. Nobody likes you. You're difficult to work with." And he comes around the desk and he hugs and kisses you and says, "Thanks for the revelation. I'm cured." Now, I know that's obnoxious and over the top, but think about it. Many of us, including managers and coaches and leaders, sometimes we're not fully aware of our own emotions, our own capacity or ability. So ultimately, coaching is about establishing awareness and facilitating actions to improve. Number one, we have to establish awareness and then facilitate actions. All too often, managers will do what? We tell someone you don't seem motivated, or you're lacking teamwork, or you have a negative attitude, or you're struggling with time management. But we also have to facilitate those actions that facilitate improvement. So when we first establish awareness, there are many, many ways you can do that. Let's start with 3. First, we have to ask questions. So let's go back to Charlie. And let's think about some questions. Now, when we're also establishing awareness, keep in mind, we're hitting some tough areas, some tough issues with people. So one of the best things you can do is to ask for permission. "Charlie, would you mind if I shared with you a couple thoughts, a couple perspectives, a couple observations? Because I don't want to make assumptions of where you're coming from." See, the goal of building and establishing awareness isn't to convince the person. It's to establish awareness. All too often, what do? We want to convince them. "Charlie, come on. You know you've got a negative attitude." How is someone supposed to accept and participate in that conversation? They might begrudgingly say yes, but do they really agree with it? So when we ask questions and we ask for permission to ask those questions, it doesn't mean they become fully aware, but we've started the conversation where there can be thoughtful acceptance. Number 2, "Charlie, would you mind if I shared with you some thoughts of where you can incorporate and integrate yourself as a better teammate?" The minute he says sure, you might say, "I think you have an awesome opportunity to integrate and enjoy your work more if you communicated and interacted at a different level with your teammates than what you're currently interacting with them." Notice the thought is somewhat neutral. He might then say, "What do you mean?" "Well, I think there are times you can come off a little arduous. And what do you think we need to do?" Or where do you think that comes from? Or where do you think that perception comes from? See, when we ask questions and share thoughts, we've planted a seed. They'll ultimately decide if the seed grows. Last, a third-party approach and reflection. Third-party coaching is when we ask somebody a question using a third-party element. So Charlie, if your best friend were here right now and he or she were to honestly say where you have an opportunity to engage more thoughtfully and integrate yourself more consistently with your teammates with a positive disposition, what do you think he or she would say? Now, Charlie, I don't want you to answer now. I just want you to think about it. And think about if your best friend were sitting here right now. So what that tactic accomplishes by bringing in a third-party approach, a third-party element, it distracts them from who's really asking the question. You, the coach. And when you ask someone to reflect, time is an awesome ally when it comes to coaching. Now, when we facilitate actions, this is where the real work begins. So let's say we've asked some questions of Charlie, and what if we respond with, well, Charlie, what if we got together weekly and we helped each other deal with this and challenge one another and get you indoctrinated into the team environment? You can use self-directed learning. Charlie, I want you to read this book on being a great teammate. And I want to sit down with you every 2 weeks and just chat about it. Not only what you've learned, but what you've learned about yourself. You're committed to improving. And last, Charlie, Tom has been with our company a long time. He is one of the most respected people in our company. When he's in our team meetings, I'd like you to observe and just journal what he does really well as a teammate. Now, why would I do that or ask someone to do that? See, when we see other people doing it, we can aspire to what's possible. When we journal, we bring other senses into play and we tend to own it a little bit more. So let me share with you a case study. We had a client who literally years ago had such low emotional intelligence that the president of this organization brought me out, said, I want you to sit down. The three of us will have lunch, and I just want to get your observations. I don't want to tell you what I think is going on. I said, sure. After about 10 minutes at lunch, the person we were ultimately going to coach was simply agreeing with me at one point during the conversation and started to point at me. I agree with you, and got so interruptive, so over the top enthusiastic, literally with this finger touched my nose when he agreed with me. And so I used a little humor and I looked at him and I said, you don't pick people's noses too, do you? And he looked at me and he said, what? I said, do you know you just touched my nose? He was fully unaware. Now here's the funny thing about this guy. Nobody in the company liked him for the most part. Nobody really liked this guy. Comments were made like, oh, I'm in a meeting with this guy. I just want to kill him. But I noticed something. He had really good intentions. Was he aware that he was interrupting? That he was raising his voice? That he was over the top? That he touched my nose, literally? He had no clue. So then we have to ask ourselves as coaches, is this person coming from a bad place or they're just unaware? They're lacking emotional intelligence. So here's what we did. The president of this organization afterwards sat me down and said, what do you think? I said, he's lacking emotional intelligence. He is so unaware of the perception that he creates. He said, that's exactly what I thought. So I'm going to meet with him once a week and I'm going to do X, Y, Z and I'm going to get together and I'm going to coach him. I said, no, you're not. He said, what do you mean? I said, I think he's so stimulated by other people, it creates a verbal explosion. I said, when I come into your organization, he literally yells across the lobby to me while there are customers present. I said, I think he's stimulated by other people. I want to try something different. He said, sure. I said, well, how long have you been coaching him? He said, 6 months and I'm not making traction. The person who was coaching this guy is a really good coach. So what we did is we had him go to Starbucks and we had him observe the people behind the counter. Now, I am not a coffee drinker, but I'm a fan of Starbucks training. They do a really nice job, at least in the Starbucks locations I've been in. And they're very interactive. They're very polite. They remember your name. And we would have him observe once a week for 30 to 40 minutes. And we'd have him journal his observations and what he learned about himself, he's committed to changing and improving. It is probably the best emotional intelligence question you can ask. What are you learning about yourself that you are committed to positively improving and changing? So after about 90 days, the HR manager says to me, he's starting to interact better with us. He's less abrupt. He's less interruptive. He's actually a really nice guy. He was always a nice guy. So here's the funny thing about the story. After a while, he started to become a better teammate. He started to enjoy work more. His teammates started to work more. What did we do? Did we demand change? No. Did we build awareness? Absolutely. Did we facilitate the change associated with the awareness through actions? Absolutely. So in summary, we have to establish awareness, facilitate the actions, and we'll ultimately get there. But don't for a second assume by just telling someone you're lacking motivation, you have a negative attitude, you're not a great teammate, you're really interruptive. That's number one. We've established awareness. But when we do it constructively and negatively, people will focus on our emotions, not on what they need to change. Number two, if we establish awareness thoughtfully and professionally, and we facilitate actions, we will start moving in the right direction. Good luck.